Hello everybody, UB here, and today we're going to talk about some mushroom sculpts that I made for my mom. So let's get started. So, as many artists do that sculpt on a regular basis, I started with some floral wire to give some structure to the mushrooms that I was going to be creating. My mom wanted two different designs, which is why I used two different designs to test different clays in my last video. Please go check that out if you're interested. But basically, this design is three little mushrooms that are coming up from the ground, and one of them has to be small enough to fit her wedding ring on it. She wanted to set this ring holder, essentially, on her kitchen windowsill so that when she was washing dishes or what have you, she could stick her ring on the little mushroom and not worry about it getting damaged. So that was the goal setting out to make this sculpt. I ended up doing two different designs, and I may or may not make a video on the second one. This one I definitely have all the footage for though, and I really enjoyed making these designs. You can see the three that I made before this in the background a little bit. They are kind of blurry, but it gives you an idea. Floral wire is very, very cheap, very, very easy to use. So the stem of a mushroom isn't going to be able to hold up its own weight, and that's where the wire really comes in handy. Going from there, I rolled out some pieces of clay and then stuck them around the wire. You can see me here basically just smoothing out the clay around the wire, and this can be a daunting task, but the thing to remember when you're sculpting mushrooms is that they are organic matter. So if they're a little lumpy, a little bit not perfectly smooth, that's okay. Just add more texture on top of it to make it blend with the rest of the piece, because organic matter isn't always perfect. And we can try to make it as perfect as we want, but that doesn't change the fact that you're going to end up with imperfections. And I'm not a master sculptor. I'm actually pretty meh at sculpting, but I definitely have learned a thing or two by just continuing to make little sculptures over the years. I made some pretty silly ones for Christmas last year, and my friends really loved them, so that's a win in my book, but they definitely weren't high art, if you will. Mushrooms. Mushrooms have been on my mind so much these past few months, and I think it's me kind of coming into my cottagecore sort of side, and I'll use that word a lot in my posts and my descriptions if you follow me on the socials. But cottagecore is this very laid back kind of like second breakfast sort of vibe. You can definitely Google cottagecore and kind of figure out what I'm talking about. But once the stems of my mushroom were done, I went in and made these little mushroom caps, and I had to make them a little bit bigger than what I intend them to end up as, which was very, very tricky. Basically, when the moisture inside of this clay comes out, it shrinks a little bit, and that's pretty common in clays. Different clays will have different levels of shrinkage. It's definitely a pit I fall into if I'm not careful, especially making mushrooms. Lately, I've been making the caps really, really big compared to the bottoms, and then I overcorrected and made one that was way too small for its bottom. So I've been having to mix and match caps and stems on mushrooms lately, but I digress. These mushrooms are a little bit different than what I've been working with lately because they're so small, but that also meant that they went really fast. Basically, to make a mushroom cap, you make a little ball that's about the size of what you want your cap to be, and then you can push the majority of the sides outward. You can kind of see me doing that on the mat here, and then you flip it over and you make a little line as a circle around the outside of that ball, and that's where your gills are going to start. Take a tool and dig out a little bit of the center just for the spot where the stem is going to go. And then you can take a sharper tool. The one that I use is just like really pointy on the end, and just start making hash marks from that line that you made on the outside towards the inside. And you can make them of different lengths and what have you, kind of mix and match it up. But regardless of kind of how you get it done, as long as there's gills there and there's a good amount of texture, you're probably okay, because this part of the mushroom is going to be underneath. So unless you're intentionally bending the edges of the mushroom cap up to be able to see some of those gills, you're not really going to have to worry about it too much. But these are the basics of really sculpting a mushroom. You got to have your stem, you've got to have your cap, and those are really the two parts. The stem you want to make fairly smooth, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then you can go in and make lines that are straight up and down with the stem, if that makes sense. So you're not going perpendicular, you're going parallel, and you basically want the most defined lines to be at the base of the stem, because that's the older part of the mushroom. So it's going to be a little bit thicker, a little bit hardier, and those lines just give it that little bit more age. And then with the mushroom cap, we kind of talked about the shape, we talked about the gills. Really, you can mix and match it up here though. With mushrooms, like these mushrooms have a very thin stem. You can make ones that have more of a hourglassy shape. There's a lot of different species that you can look up the reference photos for and kind of base your shapes and everything off of that, which is really, really fun, especially for me. I love having that variety within this sort of hyperfixation that I've had on mushrooms lately. And so I've been making a lot of different kinds of mushrooms. This is just one kind. You can do that with the caps too. You can kind of see it in this sculpture just a little bit, in that one of the caps that I'm kind of working on right now, the cap is a lot taller than the one next to it. And thankfully these styles weren't clashing by any means, so they worked great together, but you could really exaggerate that and make a different kind of mushroom entirely and make it very tall rather than very fat. The potato. I almost forgot to talk about the potato. Because the clay that I'm using to make this sculpture has to be baked in the oven, I couldn't put it in the oven on its wooden base. There's a good chance it would scorch, maybe catch fire, I don't know. But I really wanted to make sure this was safe, so instead I took the mushrooms off of their base and stuck them in a piece of potato and put that in the oven. So you're not going to eat the potato afterwards, it's not safe, but it is a really easy way to get these sculptures in the oven, done, have a flat-ish bottom, and go from there. Other fun elements that you can put at the base of these sculptures include blades of grass, which can be very difficult. They can break off as you're decorating or painting or what have you, so do that with caution. But you can also do rocks, bugs, snails, anything your heart desires. Just have fun with it, really. And then add texture to make the ground a little bit different from its surroundings, you know. That's the big thing. And any sins that you make, you can always cover up with moss later or paint or what have you. So that's kind of my philosophy with art, is if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you thought it would, you can try again in your next piece. It's not a big deal. Just make sure to kind of smudge it up, cover it, do something that fits within the theme, but definitely like hides your sins a little bit, because art is full of sins. It's a very personal scenario, and it's important to recognize that and know when it's time to stop playing with things. With all that being said, I think that's all I have to say on this sculpture. Thank you so much for watching. We've got one more video for the month coming up next week, and we're gonna have fun with that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Here's 1,000 experience points just for that. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys really make these kinds of videos possible, and if you weren't there, I might not be making videos like this. So if you'd like to join them in supporting these artsy endeavors, please check out the link in the description to my Patreon. And, you know, don't forget to drink some water. Thanks so much, and have a good day. Peace.